Where are we going to make progress? We're going to find out right now.
All right.
Hi. Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the invitation.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I literally just got back home. I was at a high school outside my district helping to induct National Honor Society students.
Oh.
And then I was in my car. Yeah, it was awesome. Then I was in my car doing a Zoom meeting about emergency contraception. And now I'm with y'all. So it's a busy Thursday.
That's very versatile. That's very versatile.
It's funny how we cover the north, central, and south end of the state between all of us. South Florida, Central Florida, where you obviously live and
so people who are watching from down here that are local, describe your district, like just the general vicinity of your district.
Yeah, I love to, Jen. So we are House District 47. So that encompasses downtown Orlando, Winter Park, and Belle Isle. It's a swing seat. It was drawn to be a swing seat by the Republican majority. And if you know where Walt Disney World is, we're about 30-40 minutes out. So it's more of the historic Orlando, the downtown district, and
actual Orlando.
Yeah, actual Orlando. Pulse nightclub is home in my district as well.
Okay.
And I grew up in Orlando, so it's definitely my home sweet home.
That's it. There's not that many, I guess, well, you're young enough that I could see that. But, certainly when I come across people my age, people that grew up in Orlando, it was a whole different universe. It was it was pretty, you had farms and you had Disney.
Right. And then UCF kind of popped up, right? As where
did that come from? That was nothing. Like when I was growing up, that was, nobody went there. I didn't even know that existed.
Well, it's funny. UCF used to be Florida Technical College, FTC, and it was built as science college for NASA and for the Space Coast. But then it evolved to become UCF. And so, it
is massive.
Huge. Yeah, we're one of the largest universities in the country. So
did you go there? Are you an alum?
I am. Yep. I have my 2 BAs, my 2 masters. I'm actually getting my PhD right now as well. So I bleed black and gold.
So you are firmly rooted in that area. Like that is it. Like you're very rooted. That's good. That's what people should really look for in a representative, because, it's not about, this is the career I want. It's, I really do represent this district and this community. And I know it so well that I can do a good job doing that. Like I think it's very important. So let me ask you, coming up this session, what are the things that you are hopeful about that Democrats might actually be able to be successful with this session? Like, what are your thoughts on what's coming up?
Yeah, I appreciate this question. I mean, for anyone who follows the legislative sessions, that it's a Republican majority, right? And as we'll probably talk about soon, we actually lost 5 Democratic seats in the Florida House. We just barely lost JJRC in South Florida in the Senate. But we're very much up against aggressive majorities. And so we're going to have to build bridges where we can, while never being afraid to hold people and corporations accountable when we must. And in particular, I'm hopeful on issues around the unemployment system, that we can find some common ground on changes to the unemployment system. And I can talk more about a bill that we actually worked with JJR on, Senator Jose Javier Rodriguez, and now it looks like Senator Bobby Powell will be our Senate sponsor. But also, just diving deeper into housing protection, trying to prevent evictions from taking place from those impacted by COVID-19, and providing relief for debt so that people can pay off what they owe to landlords and not start, at negative in the new year. So we have a lot of work to do in just the COVID-19 world. I'm also hopeful for commonality on environmental issues. That tends to be a topic where there is bipartisanship.
Yeah. Yes.
Corporations tend to dictate a lot of even the environmental policy. So if you know anything about me, I'm very aggressive against, whether it's fossil fuel companies or sugar, water bottling companies. Like I do my best to shine a light, on their influence and try to counter it as much as we can, because I refuse to let corporations set the environmental agenda. It should be the scientists and the people of Florida that make those decisions.
See, this is a change maker.
Yeah.
This is why we just finished talking about our bootlicker, and then we go into talking about the change maker. So that's you. So we start low and move up.
I love that. I love that. That's fantastic. I mean, just for folks know too, like some things that we got to be on defense on. I mean, they're already forward. The liability protection for corporations. So they're talking all about that in the Florida legislature. Also, just thinking about
corporations are people, Anna. Don't you know that?
I know. That's what they keep doing, Peter. It's so frustrating. And so I also foresee another attempt at a corporate income tax reduction. And just for context sake, like Florida has one of the lowest corporate income tax rates. It's actually currently at less than 4.5%. Yeah. And I have a feeling that corporations are going to use both the pandemic and Amendment 2 as reasons to continue with the current reductions and even more. And, one of the biggest tax issues right now is online sales tax collection, which is actually an area where there seems to be bipartisan support, except last 2 years when I was talking about it, no Republican wanted to touch it. But now having online sales tax collection seems like it will happen. But my concern is that they're going to use this new source of revenue to offset corporate income taxes, when really corporate income tax is already fine, right? Like, they don't need more tax breaks. So we're going to have to be on guard for those kind of shenanigans.
Yeah.
One thing that the reason why we really wanted to get you on at this particular time is because obviously we looked deep into the article that was put out by the Sun Sentinel. And as you know, this is Debbie's territory down here. So of course, they're not going to be very favorable to you saying that corporate money is a bad thing in politics. And of course, Joe Geller, the Gellers have been in politics for over 30 years down here.
Right.
And they just kind of assume in the, sort of like the Tri-County area, Palm Beach, Broward, and Dade, is that corporate money is just par for the course. But I think especially, that's why we call it generational change. And the reason we see it this way is that, no, you actually don't need to have corporate money in the political arena. Business and government are supposed to be separate entities. And so would love to hear more about your thoughts and how, running for office does not have to be predicated on you taking money from Big Sugar and FP&L and so on.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny, just some more context for folks. Like, I never thought I would run for office before. It wasn't something that I saw in my stars. I mean, I grew up working class. My parents are both immigrants from Iran. They met in Orlando. I have a twin sister and an older brother, and we had a whole lot of love in my family, but not a whole lot of money. And my parents worked minimum wage jobs. My dad went to UCF. He became an engineer. And even as an engineer, he worked at Walt Disney World as a customer service representative on the weekends. And then my mom worked at Kmart. That was her last job before she passed away when I was a kid to cancer. And so, thank you. But so my context, right, as a kid growing up in Orlando is one where the influence of corporations are very damaging to families, in the sense that, policies are policies that would help improve lives are prevented from taking place. And at the same time, families like mine are reliant on government resources to get by because we to live. And on the weekends, us three as children were home alone because my parents couldn't afford any type of sitter and they both had to be at work. And like, that's not a healthy family, right? Like that can be risky. And so those are my experiences growing up, that when I, went to public high school, then went to UCF myself and worked at Planned Parenthood for 6 years, which is another personal story for me because I went to Planned Parenthood for birth control when I was younger and continued volunteering there and et cetera. But when I made the decision to run for office, it was kind of like a no-brainer that these corporations that have actively lobbied against our best interests should not be a part of my campaign. And I will say, I met with AIF, I met with the Florida Chamber because I wanted to tell my story myself and not allow others to tell it for me. But it was really surprising to me, just their level of influence and also the Democratic lobbyists, that they have, right? Because they're people, they're people that like you've met in different circumstances, and they're good people too. But at the end of the day, they have their responsibilities, right? And so it's quite eye-opening how they influence us across both parties. And so I remember back in the day in 2017, signing the No Fossil Fuel pledge that the Sunrise Movement was doing back then.
Yeah.
And one of my interns came to me about it, one of our volunteers, who's now one of my staffers. And she asked me to sign it. I was like, yeah, of course. Like, we're not taking money from them. Like, it wasn't even a no-brainer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then to get to Tallahassee, and it's like, oh, like, they're really influential. Here's why. And and it's funny. I think being a new kid on the block, like, it gives you a sense of naivety where, like, you don't even second guess your gut reaction, right? Because you don't have a reason to. So it's actually really helpful. So I can just be myself and be everyone, and make values-based decisions without having any type of previous institutional context that impacts some of my colleagues, right? Where they think the norm is this. For me, there is no norm. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're redefining the norm. And I think that sets a tone for other lawmakers to be inspired by. And actually, the last thing I'll say before tossing it back to y'all is that usually in most cases, you see politicians in their second term get more lobby money, right? Like, usually the first campaign isn't as much, but the second campaign, after spending 2 years in Tallahassee, you get more of those $1,000 checks. For us, it was the opposite. Because there were actually some institutions that gave to us, and I didn't realize how shitty they are, candidly. And then, once I started talking about rent stabilization and renters' rights, the Florida Apartment Association wants to meet with me, and they gave me $1,000 my first campaign. I didn't know what their priorities were, and so now it's like they're not and they're not going to give to you, and I'm fine with that. And I've learned from the 2 years of just all the other industries and what they lobby for, where I've actually returned checks that have come my way, and I reject checks. And so I think politicians should be like, if you're doing it right, you should be getting less corporate money over time, right?
Yes.
Versus more, which usually the opposite is what happens.
You would think that if you've established yourself as a good representative, you would have that much more trust in your constituents, and they would be gladly donating.
Well, you know what the truth is that if you're really serving your constituents, you don't need to spend a lot of money to have a campaign, because people just like you and know you. So you don't need, it's like, that's the point. But I mean, granted, I do support publicly financed elections so that more people can be involved. But in reality, if you're really doing your job, you shouldn't have to make a hard sell, and you don't need all that money. And that's the truth. The reason people like Debbie need that money is because if she doesn't keep her name out there, nobody's going to really go out of their way.
How have you found the new representation that has come up? We are very friendly with Marie Woodson. There are, some others that are coming up now. I happen to know Omari Hardy from the time that I lived in Palm Beach County. Do you find that there's like a new rising group of individuals? Obviously, we think the world of Carlos. I've met him a number of times. He's your, what I would call your soul brother, if you will.
My work husband.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And, you're the two most progressive people in the Florida State House, and it's not a mistake that you guys are in the same area.
We should double date. He's my work husband.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, please. Let's bring up
whenever it's safe.
She said work husband.
Yeah, whenever it's safe to come to Disney. I mean, obviously we haven't been up there in a long time, but to have you, because again, look.
So funny, because actually my real husband is on the way there right now with child number 2. He's going to Disney. That's so funny. But I am noticed how I'm not part of that.
Right. I get it.
If you could take away, because obviously there's a lot of pressure on you. You are, no pressure, but you are the Florida AOC. So, you're gonna get a lot of the
oh my God.
You're gonna have a lot of people that like you, but you're also gonna have a target on your back, because you are a very loud voice for the people who have no voice. And that is a very big part of the process, especially in this state, where you literally have a
Yeah.
governor who, I mean, you literally could see Trump's hand up his rear end. I mean, I forgive me for being so graphic about it, but DeSantis is as much as anybody who is a Trump lackey. And for those people who don't know why DeSantis is so much in Trump's, corner, Trump literally made him the governor of this state.
Oh, yeah.
Literally.
Right. He owes it to him. He owes it to him.
I totally wanted to make him governor, so I made him governor, and he really owes me everything. It's really incredible. And we so thought that Putnam was going to be the governor, and now DeSantis is governor. So if people
right.
But and again, I've always said this: we have a very low bar here.
We do.
And so after 8 years of Rick Scott, quite honestly, Voldemort. This is not, I mean, Ron DeSantis is, I just feel like he could be the worst thing ever. And yet we're so numb to that here. Is it like, whatever.
So to bring it back to what I was asking, how have you found so far, obviously, like I said, it's difficult to be in Tallahassee, being the progressive that you are. And obviously it's a very non-progressive, state house and Senate. How have you found in terms of building relationships, and especially with the incoming freshmen so far? How's that been?
Any new people that you feel like are going to be on the good team?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's some great freshmen, and I was proud to endorse some of these competitive primaries to help get folks like Representative Angie Nixon, Omari Hardy, Michelle Rayner, some very fierce advocates.
You supported primaries against Democrat incumbents?
I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now that's impressive.
Now you really have a target on your
Oh my God. That's so impressive. You could not get anybody down here to even do anything like that.
Yeah,
we made endorsements and we cut checks as well for my political committee.
Wow.
So because we have to build collective power together. We it's not about ego. It can't be about pride. Like you have to powers to be built collectively.
Yeah.
Whatever positional power I have to lift up the best Democrat in races, like I want to do. And so yeah, we're very proactive in that way. And I also just want to kind of tackle the other part of your question too, Peter, around like, partnerships and like working in the legislature as someone who pursues a progressive view of the world, right? A vision for the world. There actually are some progressive issues that I think you can find alignment with conservatives. In particular, I'm thinking about corporate influence. I mean,
yes,
corporate giveaways.
Yes,
really libertarians.
100%. I am
against that stuff.
100%. And so, I spoke to one of the incoming speakers about one of our bills that we did last session, which would be an interstate compact and corporate giveaways. And basically, right now we play this race to the bottom where we offer major tax incentives, give away land. We do all these efforts to attract like the Amazons and these other companies to Florida, where research has shown that especially when you don't have evaluation attached to these programs, oftentimes the states are just competing and losing out while corporations win. And so this interstate compact would basically be multiple states agreeing to not play in this game and allowing the free market to be the free market versus competing and impeding the market. And so I made it clear to anywhere.
Oh, screen freeze.
Uh-oh, what happens?
No, her screen's let it work itself out. We'll give her a minute. Hopefully everything's all right if she has to reset. But while that is happening on her end, I mean, you could tell she really has a very good.
Wow, I can't believe she endorsed challengers to incumbent Democrats.
But
that's impressive.
Well, like I said, there is something to be said for somebody who is principled and says, listen, we may be in the same party, but if you're not going to fight for what is necessary, again, that's why Joe Geller, was, and again, it's we were just talking about how great you are.
We were singing your praises. And I took you off the screen because it froze in the most unfortunate, way. And so I'm like,
you were making a face like,
and so I'm like, that's not good. She wouldn't want to be stuck like
that.
that.
Make on Splash Mountain where you're like,
no,
it was going to say, that I'm talking about corporations. So AT&T was probably like, cut her off.
Yeah, I know. Man, see, when you remember, Bernie would go on like CNN, and if Bernie would in any way talk about like, oh, we got to tax the major corporate, get him off.
Yeah, give him the hook.
Yeah, give him the hook.
I know. But anyways, I was like, kind of closing my point anyways. But yeah, like there are issues where we can find common ground with conservatives.
Yeah.
I think it's about painting the difference between being pro-market versus pro-big business, and like holding them accountable to the hypocrisy that they're practicing, because it is anti-free market when you pick winners and losers, and when you cut tax breaks to your political donors. Like there are so many industries, whether it's sugar, fossil fuels, that we subsidize to keep alive, and where we should allow the free market to decide, like, let's move away from these industries, right? But because of car rentals, as an example, the major car rental companies, which have, one of them declared bankruptcy during this pandemic, they have pushed in the last legislative session for not only tax breaks, but to tax some of the new apps for car rentals, like the car share programs and like the apps that let you rent out your car to others.
Right. Anything where anybody could impede in their business.
Right. So they are intentionally trying to tax competition. And it's like, what happened to the free market? Don't you guys like innovation? Oh, you don't like it when it impedes with your business? And so, that's the hypocrisy you have to call out.
So let's talk a little bit about last session. One of the things that was a very big red button for me, big issue, was the parental consent law that passed. For people that don't know, Florida has been always restrictive with women's right to choose. And last legislative session, a law was passed where minors have to have parental consent for abortion. I know from personal experience representing girls who were trying to get judicial bypass when I was in Texas. This is a horrible, horrible law. This is I feel like it's some Karen in some part of the state who homeschools her kids and they're all perfect and play the violin. And she's the kind of person that's creating this legislation because, that's how she envisions everybody's life. And that's just not the way it is. Like, I had a client doing a Jane Roe. We used to call them Jane Roe cases. And she couldn't tell her parents because it was her father's baby.
Wow.
Right. So this is the kind of stuff that exists in the world that people that live in gated communities don't want to necessarily talk about, even though it happens there too, by the way.
Right.
Those people just have better access to be able to get around the laws a lot easier than the people who have to go through the public system. But that law to me is devastating. So I'm sure you were against that. I'm sure that was not something. So would you talk a little bit about how something like that happens here and how do we deal with that now?
Yeah, I'd love to, Jen. I'd love to. So Florida, before that bill for parental consent was passed and signed into law by the governor, Florida has been a parental notification state, which is already really burdensome. But to provide more history to folks, Florida has a very strong right to privacy in our state constitution, actually stronger than the federal constitution, which has allowed us to prevent some of the worst and most extreme anti-abortion laws from actually becoming implemented. I'm thinking about the 24-hour mandatory delay bill that was passed back in 2015. That forces someone before they can end their pregnancy to actually wait 24 hours after meeting with the doctor, which we all know situations of work, travel, transportation, hotel stays, that creates so many more barriers for folks to make that personal medical decision. And for the parental consent shift, it was an effort by the Republican leadership for 2 years. And what folks need to know is that majority of young people, over 66% of them, are talking to a parent or guardian about an unplanned pregnancy. The third that is not, like Jen just explained, are facing situations that are so complicated and challenging and scary, where the parent might be the abuser, where they might be undocumented, where they might be a foster kid, where they might not have clear communication with the parent or guardian because maybe they are incarcerated. I mean, there's so many dynamics here.
Yeah.
Where they don't have a place to either notify, and now that it's consent, even if you talk to your parent or guardian, they can veto your decision. And if they veto your decision, you now have to go contact your clerk of court and get an attorney to help you get that bypass as you talked about. The only way to then end your pregnancy is a judicial bypass. So you can imagine being 16 years old, already navigating this situation.
Oh yeah, no, I've thought of this. It's ridiculous.
Right.
I do not know. And nowadays, maybe more so because the kids are so much more like tech savvy and look things up and they're more connected. But like, I know when I was 15, there is no way that I knew my friends and people would have the wherewithal to navigate that system and do that. And what you end up having are people that give birth at the prom and you find babies in trash cans, or they kill them, or they do all sorts of other stuff. Like, this is not a good situation. People don't understand.
Right. Well, and the reality is that if you want to reduce the rate of abortion, there are ways that we can do that, increasing access to contraception and ensuring that every person has access to age-appropriate, comprehensive sexual health education.
But we don't do that. The same people that don't want the abortions don't want the other stuff either.
Right. That's the frustration. I mean, the rate of abortion in the country has declined from 1 in 3 to 1 in 4. And that's because of the Affordable Care Act, which did provide access to contraception, and because of sex ed being implemented in states and counties across the country. But Florida, the norm in Florida is abstinence only, like what I had in my public school. And it does set an uneven playing field where young people can't make informed decisions. And I want to be clear, abstinence is a method of contraception. But if you don't teach a young person the facts about sexual activity and consent, and give them age appropriate information, they're not going to be able to make an informed decision. And it also puts them more at risk of sexual violence, because you want young people to be able to know good touch, bad touch, right? And have understanding of what is appropriate behavior by the adults around them. And so there's so much more we could do if we truly want to empower our young people. This is not it. And time again, like you said, Jen, legislature just pursues an agenda that is anti-reproductive health, and every person is impacted, but those impacted the most are going to be folks that are working class, people of color, folks, language barriers. We had a bypass situation in the Hillsborough court where the young person's mom is in Guatemala. Like this, this person came to this country without their parent, and they're an immigrant minor. And so, what can you do in those situations? Like, it's just, these laws don't fit into the circumstances we're talking about. But like you said, the people that are pushing these laws are envisioning a family unit that is supported and connected, but we know that's not the case for so many families across the country.
Right. It definitely over penalizes poor people and people of color, which is just, it's very frustrating.
The hardest part about politics, especially on issues like this, is that it's considered a wedge issue. It's considered one where, especially when the, I say that the worst part about the Democratic Party is that it is completely owned by Wall Street. And the worst part of the Republican Party as it stands today is that it's completely controlled by the evangelical right. So when you start having this discussion, it becomes religion, it becomes culture, and all that stuff. What about an issue that I would like to think should be universally agreed upon, and that is we have to protect our environment in this state. It has gotten to the point now where, especially down here, I mean, I don't know how things get, more so when the temperature becomes a little bit more temperate, once you get to Orlando and north, but down here, it is a subtropical region, and it's very flat. And we just had, Tropical Storm ETA did not even give us a direct hit, yet we dealt with rain on and off for about 5 days. Flooding
completely flooded
so easily.
Oh yeah,
it was. I mean, you should have seen my neighborhood. I mean, in certain
if a category 2, even a 1 that it sat on top of us for any length of time, I'm fine because I live in the highest point of Broward County, and I actually have a boat. But, I don't know where you guys are going to be swimming over.
And as you know, the legislature, it's always people with the least amount of means who are always going to suffer the most. They're always they're always on top of each other. And, you know, I'm in a part of West Pembroke Pines that is just, it's like ground zero for this. We're not even near the water. I mean, but it's not,
it comes.
You know, so my question is, in the legislature, and you know, messaging is everything. Is there any type of legislation right now that's on the table that could be agreed upon, especially something like a solar initiative? Anything that is going to reduce our carbon footprint? Is there anything in the works right now? Because I saw what they put in I think it's in your district, the big Mickey Mouse ears, that's like that giant solar field. I mean, that's cute and great, but you know what? We need that everywhere. And I will never forget when, you know, Gillum and the rest of them were in the primary a couple of years ago, you know, when FPL was trying to do damage control with their PR about, well, we're not really that bad. We have solar. They were filming solar fields in Georgia. They were claiming that they were in Florida. So what is...
Give us some promising. Give us something promising.
And if there isn't, what can we do to help you?
Yeah.
Right. So the irony about companies like Florida Power and Light, whose parent company is NextEra,
of course,
is that in states like Texas, where the energy market is deregulated, it's not a monopoly structure like we have here. NextEra is actually one of the biggest producers of renewable energy. So the problem in Florida too is that because it's such a regulated monopoly, these companies really. These top 5 companies, right, that are the investor-owned utilities, and we have municipals, you know, across the state too. They dictate the energy policy, which is also why the Public Service Commission, the PSC, has become a rubber stamp for utility companies to approve rate hikes, and most recently have been eroding at net metering. And for those who don't know what net metering is, it is basically one of the most important policies to incentivize the installation of rooftop solar. So utility companies, primarily the investor-owned ones, they don't like rooftop solar because it competes with them. Of course. So if they pursue solar, they want to do it on their property, under their grid, and not allow it to be decentralized, which also has impacted our smaller businesses that are, you know, are the ones installing rooftop solar and manufacturing the solar panels, creating really great green jobs. And I think the other part of this too is not just pursuing renewable energy in the construction of rooftop solar and solar farms and exploring things like floating solar, which we're piloting in Orlando, but also energy efficiency. Because remember, in order for us to reduce our carbon footprint, we need to also invest in decarbonization and in reducing our energy usage, and whether that takes shape as, you know, converting to public transit electric vehicles or battery storage or better insulation so that we're just using less energy. We need to reduce energy consumption through energy efficiency as we increase the production of energy through non-fossil fuel means.
Right. It's both. It has to happen on both ends.
Right. 100%. So policy-wise, right, like, we have filed for 2 years in a row Florida's 100% renewable energy goals bill, and we're going to refile it, but we're going to actually strengthen it. So I'm very excited about that, and talking to potential Senate sponsors, because JJR used to be our Senate sponsor. So we're identifying a new Senate sponsor now, but I am very excited working with our stakeholders and building a piece of legislation that I think will be model for Florida to really be the leader in both energy efficiency and renewable energy production, while also focusing on decarbonization. But right now, the conversation seems to be around coastal resiliency. You know, both the Senate President and the Speaker of the House penned an op-ed maybe about 2 months ago talking about sea levels rising, but not using the words like climate change, and not talking about carbon production and emissions, which is disappointing. But again, I think it speaks to the point we made earlier, where these major corporations, that's where they want the conversation, right? They don't want to be held responsible when it comes to their reliance on fossil fuels here in Florida. And they want to change. They will evolve because technology is evolving, where it's going to become more cost effective for them to do that, but they're going to do it as slow as they can, because many of these power plants that are built in the 80s don't have expiration dates, right? And they're still paying bonds off them. So they're going to try to like squeeze out these power plants as long as they can. And we were very, very happy here in Orlando for OUC, our municipal utility company, after years of advocacy by groups like the Sierra Club, has announced their transition off fossil fuels. And so we need to push cities to take action, which will help us accomplish real policy at a statewide level. But I do think the cities play a very important role because it helps us, A, achieve these goals more realistically, but B, for someone like me to go to the Republican leadership and say, listen, a dozen cities already have goals. Florida needs to catch up. It gives us more hope to make that happen.
Yeah, I agree. Local is definitely where a lot of this action needs to take place. What were you had something you were gonna...
I think that what I learned when I was living in Delray, and probably more so up in Orlando and in Tampa, is there are so many townhome communities. There are so many HOA communities. In my opinion, this is really where I think the solar initiative could really take off in Florida. Is you kind of need to have, sort of these communities banding together to say, no, we are going to do solar. It's one thing if an individual is trying to do it on their property. If you've got 250 homes that are basically in agreement that from an energy cost perspective, and let's face it, solar is universally been proven now to be cheaper than fossil fuels. If you're looking at it from an economic standpoint, which is always the easiest selling point, especially to people on the right side of the aisle, just show them how it benefits them in their wallet. If there is anything that we can do to sort of help with that type of legislation, that should cut. And, again, we had Senator Pizzo on last week, and he is definitely a centrist Democrat, but he's not somebody who is adverse to the type of policies that we support. You just have to show him economically how it benefits.
No, our local Republicans support Everglades restoration. So right. And so, there is common ground there.
There is. And
and on this energy piece too, there are many Republican lawmakers and former lawmakers that I know who are friends of mine that all drive Teslas. And they drive Teslas because I think, A, it's a luxury vehicle, right? Yeah. It feels really fancy and it's cost effective. And now we see the Volkswagen settlement dollars, part of it's being used to build solar electric vehicle charging stations, most that are solar operated. And then I go to one of my constituents, because again, I represent a swing seat. So we have Republicans, NPAs, and Democrats. And talking to one of my Republican homeowners in the south side of my district, and he has solar panels. He has 5 Tesla battery power packs outside his home where he can take himself off the grid if he wants to and have enough energy, for at least a day or two. And he told me how hard it was working with Duke Energy, which is the utility company on that part of my district, to even be able to get his rooftop solar installed, get his battery chargers installed, and to be able to plug into the grid and then turn off the grid. So, they
don't like you to turn off the grid. They don't mind you plugging into the grid. You're just not allowed to turn off the grid.
Yep.
Right. And so, there's just so many opportunities for policy to incentivize the shift towards electric vehicles, to invest in public transportation, and to, support installing solar panels, which again, net metering is such a big part of that because it's that ROI for you that makes it economically feasible and smart to pursue. And this is also an issue of national security, right? Because we have so much military presence across the country, often driven by oil, right? And so the amount of money we spend globally when it comes to military presence in oil-rich nations and the political conflict that's also originates from that, right, can be really prevented and eased down when we're not so reliant on oil. And of course, the idea of a natural disaster coming to Florida, knock on wood, we'll do everything to be prepared for that. But the reality is that having especially public buildings that are powered by solar means that if power goes off in a neighborhood, you have a safe haven. You have a carbon neutral school like we do in Osceola County called Neo Academy that now serves as a place for emergency staff to go, for folks to get recharged on their phones and their computer devices. It becomes a place of health and safety. And so there's so many other benefits to this that I always love to lift up to my Republican colleagues and my more centrist Democrats, because I think it offers greater depth of perspective. This is not red versus blue issue. This is
No.
a really important one that we all can find common ground on.
Okay, so Anna, what are the odds of me ever getting a bright line from here to Orlando? What are the odds of us extending the bright line? Wait, but no, this is the best to me is that we have a president who's working on a space force, and yet we can't even get the bright line from West Palm to Orlando.
Right. I know it's sad. I mean, keep in mind, Rick Scott was the governor that turned away, millions of federal dollars for public transportation, in our state. The Bright Line is private, though they do get a lot of public bonds and some, incentives as well. So, but because they're private, I feel like it's probably more likely to happen sooner than later.
We're behind every country. Like we have the most pathetic rail system that I mean, it really is. It should be embarrassing.
Oh, I know. When you're in places like, in the Northeast, you can just hop on a train and pop from city to city. And, connectivity also connects us through our ideas. Like it strengthens our communities. It helps eliminate divisions of class. And so yeah, it's really, really a priority. Now, of course, COVID-19, I think, has proved interesting challenges for public transportation, but other countries have demonstrated to us that there are ways to still travel safely through public transport. But it's something we need to really pursue, and just the idea of being able to hop on a train and get from one city to the other and work while you're at it. I mean, it de-stresses you. It's good for the environment. Like everything about it is very positive.
And it shouldn't be, Miami to Orlando. It should be Miami to Tallahassee. There should be
absolutely.
You have to have. I mean, it obviously would be difficult in terms of the trajectory to go to Tampa, but Orlando to Gainesville to Tallahassee. There is no excuse that this does not exist, especially
it's so hard for people here to get to Tallahassee. Like it is such a pain in the butt.
Or I still say Orlando should be the capital of the state. Not cute to you, but the truth is that that's really
would make more sense.
It would, just from a geographical standpoint, it make more sense. But even if that's
never happening,
if you had a bright line that could get you, to Tallahassee from Miami in 5 hours.
She's going to work on that for us.
Yeah, well, we're going to help you work on it, and then we can.
I love it. It's such a priority. It really is. And
listen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. This is, of course, the final question. It's a big one. I think you know what it is. We have a gubernatorial election coming up in 2 years. And obviously right now people are going to start, staking their claims, Nikki Fried. So between who ultimately ends up running for the governorship, aside from Nikki, if you do choose to run, would like to know, I think a lot of people would like to know, what separates you from, anybody else who may decide to get into the race. So maybe Gwen Graham runs again, you never know. So we would obviously love to know what you would be doing to distinguish yourself, and why you feel, if you did choose to run, you would be a formidable opponent to take out Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this.
There's so many assumptions in that. It's so loaded, but yeah, tell, please.
Well, I mean, contrast is everything in politics, right? And you have to be able to share that contrast. And obviously, the calls of me running for governor are grassroots. They're driven by everyday people that we've been committed to supporting and have been able to lift up through fix the unemployment system for them, or preventing an eviction from taking place, or getting them direct cash assistance. And of course, all my years, 12 years of advocacy in this state, starting as a college kid to working at Planned Parenthood to now being in public office. I think just my personal journey and my personal history as a strong, lifelong Democrat that fights for everyday people and can build a multiracial working class coalition, I think is already work that we've been doing, even unknowingly, because it's the right thing to do, that helps us stand out in a crowd and really helps to highlight that you don't need to come from money to run for office. You don't need to get the buy-in from corporations. As long as the people got your back, then you are going to be a formidable opponent. And I think we have demonstrated that in even calling out the Democratic Party when necessary, especially when they're making decisions that are against the experiences of working folks. And to that point, to win Florida, you have to build a rainbow coalition. And I mentioned one of my Republican constituents, like we flipped a seat and then we kept it by a larger margin. And we won 2 precincts that went to President Trump, because you have to be able to talk to every type of person and sit in the fanciest of living rooms to talk about the quality of life of speeders on their lake, and then go to a hotel lobby on the north side of your district to help pay for people's rent, and be able to talk to those folks with the same level of respect and commitment and compassion as anyone else. And so that helps us stand out without even thinking about something like the governor's race. And when it comes to Governor Ron DeSantis, oh my goodness, he is not Trump. You know, he acts like Trump, but he's not. He doesn't have the same Trump support that the president has carried. And I know that because many Republicans we've worked with on employment have told me, I voted for the governor, I'm never voting for him again, because he turned his backs on working people when it came to the unemployment system. And he showed his true colors during this pandemic. He's not a moderate. He is very extreme and does not have the best interests of everyday people. So, you know, I think those were all different values that contrast us and drive us. And I don't know what I will be doing in the next 2 years. We're taking all options seriously, but it's quite humbling knowing that there are people out there who want us to run statewide, and it's not something I take for granted.
I want to say something. I'm going to say something here before you go, because something really speaks to me, what you were saying, and it's something I've been saying all along, that candidates are supposed to come from the ground up. The candidates are supposed to be born from the communities that they represent as leaders of those communities. And it's so much more organic when it happens that way versus the top down. I want to be in this position, so let me find a really good ad agency to sell me to all these people so that they buy this. And that's essentially the top down political approach. And when you do it the other way, even when you don't win, you still build this momentum of a movement. When you have it from the top down and you don't win, there's no there. There's nothing holding that up. So all the best campaigns are that way, and it should be organic that way.
Right. Yeah. When you want to build transformational relationships with your community, not transactional ones. And what you just painted, you know, when we hire consultants to do ad campaigns and we're just like blasting information that's one way at you, that's very transactional. When you only show up for the campaign cycle to get people to vote for you, that's transactional. When you show up every single day and give with that expectation and open up your heart and your mind to dialogue, that's transformational. When you invite people to join you and to be a part of this work, and you create leaders from that opportunity, that's transformational. So yeah, we're very, very committed to that every single day.
And I love that you say we, because I always say we. I've always said we. I've said we the whole time. Now, generally, it's funny because I was literally talking about you and me, literally. But
so
it's really good when you just say we.
I have always spoken in the collective ever since I was a Democrat, because I remember, you know, I was vice president of College Democrats at UCF. My twin sister was president, and she made that point to me too, actually, that we always talk in the we. And so I always do that. It's a reflection of the fact that you can't do anything alone, and you're always surrounded by a community, and you got to earn that, and you got to respect that. And you got to continue to nurture that, because we are a family. So yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
Anna, I think you have done an absolutely incredible job, and I certainly hope that you do decide, if you do decide to run for governor, I think you have a lot of support. People that supported me in my primaries would definitely like to see you there. So that's my burden. And
very well done. Yeah.
But I have to say, you're one charming young lady, Anna.
Oh my God, stop.
Well, that's my
all right.
And of course,
yeah, like that's a little terrifying.
And he does it all the.
Well, I have to. Well,
he's working on perfecting them.
If we're going to have a podcast, we have to have fun.
We have to have fun.
Right.
You know, Gillum was able to. Listen, we could say what we want about how he ran the general, but the way he ran his primary campaign in 2018 was absolutely phenomenal. He did an amazing job. No one thought he was going to get above fourth.
Okay, Anna, when you run for governor, okay, here's a little bit of advice from somebody in South Florida. Don't come campaigning down here with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Hillary Clinton, and Michael Bloomberg, because it just really doesn't go over well. Okay.
Can I tell y'all a secret? Something I've never told.
Of course.
So in my first campaign, I had the opportunity to be endorsed by Hillary Clinton, and I declined.
Yes,
I
excellent.
have never told anyone that story because I just didn't want to like make drama about it. You know, I didn't want to like.
No, talking to us. There's nobody else.
There's somebody else here. And the truth is, actually, we're still small potatoes, so there's not that many people
growing,
here.
But
we're growing.
Well, but I mean, it was something that I really thought about because,
absolutely,
you know, like, of course, it's very humbling, and you know, there are moments where Hillary Clinton, you know, stands up for values that I align with, and you know, I can't deny like a history of women and girls, right? Of empowerment. Like people are so complicated, right? But overall, like not something I felt comfortable with at all.
Way too much baggage there. Way too much
and
baggage.
just, you know, very corporate driven. There's just a lot of like, you know, LinkedIn things that I can't like I just ignore. And so, you know, and that's been my own personal evolution over the years, right? And kind of developing my manifesto, if you will, of who I am and who I want to be. And so, yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but that's something that I always reflect back on, and it was the right choice to make. And, you know, it was easier than I thought it would be too.
You're very fortunate to be, you know, Orange County, Pinellas County, Hillsborough County. There happens to be a part of the state. It's not big, but it exists.
A little
where
progressive
it is somewhat
community.
Of a progressive bastion. It's great. It's where Bernie did the best. It's where Gillum did the best. Unfortunately, it's not like that down here, but it is changing.
We're working on it.
But it is changing. It is, you know, there's definitely, you know, there's a much older population down here, and it's much more, you know, the MSNBC, CNN crowd. But that is changing. And we, you know, Jen had a phenomenal group of, you know, high school and college students that were there. You happen to be in a phenomenal area where you also are a UCF alum, and you have USF and a lot of these other schools where, you know, building that young coalition.
Well, and I want to be clear about something. Like, our campaign is intergenerational. Like, you know, I can't speak too much to South Florida, right? But I will say, like, the people who stand with us they include like longtime Planned Parenthood activists, right? Like, they include LGBTQ folks of every background. They include retired business people that are compassionate. Like I do feel really blessed because the coalition that we've built here in Central Florida is multiracial. There's multiple generations. That it is various economic classes. Like, I do have folks that are of a wealthy background that support us because they want to see corporations pay their fair share. They're outraged by it, right? So I do think as progressives, when we lead by our values and are bold on these issues, it's over time you do build an audience that maybe at first they were, you know, inquisitive, if you will, but because you carry this open heart, people will align with you. And it's definitely challenging, and it takes time to build. And I look at the last, you know, 12 years of my life, like we have been committed to this for over a decade. You know what I mean? Like, it's taken time, but I feel really lucky because, you know, when I go to, like, today I went to Lakeland to participate in a delivery of a letter to Publix, because Publix Corporation, very conservative, right?
Yes.
Very influential.
Yes.
So Publix, long story short, they don't provide emergency contraception.
Oh, of course.
On the shelf. You have to go talk to the pharmacist, which is a barrier to folks who need it. And no other company does that but they. And so
I didn't even know that. That's interesting. I had no clue. Could see how often I'm shopping for that.
Right. Well, you know, so to that point, like, so I met a group of, I kid you not, like 5 women at a gas station in Lakeland. I got in the car with them and we drove to the Publix headquarters and basically tried to deliver this letter. They wouldn't let us, you know. But I look in the car and it's folks like all these women, they're much older than I, but they're just as passionate. They care just as much. And when a space, you know, and here they are challenging a corporate entity. So the moments like that give me a lot of hope, right? And it takes time to build that, but you know, we are building a diverse coalition of people that care and are willing to take risk, and that fuels me every single day.
You've got 2 new big supporters here, and we will continue to talk about you.
You see that?
Podcast.
Dank Fuzzball says, Anna, please run for governor.
I'm sure she hears that every day.
Not from Dank Fuzzball. She doesn't hear it every day from Dank Fuzzball 58.
I feel like you just want to say that over and over again.
I kind of do.
Well, listen, if you end up running for governor, think about all the dank memes you're going to get. So that one, right?
Thank you so much.
It's been a real pleasure. Definitely keep in touch. Love to have you on again. And yeah, we will definitely.
Yes, if there's ever any sort of announcement that you want to make, please keep us in mind.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thanks,
y'all.
Anna.
Yeah, great evening.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Phenomenal.
That was great.
And there's a reason why everybody,
she's
especially
great
everybody in the progressive community, likes her. And listen, I didn't want to say it when she was on, but we'll say it now because she has no baggage. Gillum had a lot of baggage.
No, she's just such a nice girl.
Yeah,
she's such a nice girl. And she's happy and nice. I mean, cares.
Gillum had baggage before the whole thing.
Oh yeah. Oh God.
So
yeah,
you're literally talking about. Again, I don't mean for it to be hyperbolic in any respect, because everyone likes to overemphasize things, and everything is everything is totally crazy in politics, But the truth is that she is our AOC. She is the AOC of Florida. There's no question about it, and she's going to get a lot of pressure to run.
Good, she should, because she's, what, and she is the kind of person that embodies what I'm saying about that when you run a campaign, that is its own benefit in keeping the movement going, regardless of the outcome. She's one of those people that could really help build a movement in the state.
Yeah.